So I'm just finishing up a difficulty 10 Lazarus run here, and one question that I see rise pretty often in the chat and in the YouTube comments is, how do I know the items that are coming out of these boxes? How do I know if they're good or if they're bad? Should you salvage them? Should you sell them to other players? Should you keep them for yourself? So in today's video, we're going to go through my inventory, and we're going to also go through some quick tips and tricks that you can use to identify whether you have a good piece of loot or you've crafted a good item in New World. But before we do that, a quick word from today's sponsor. When it comes to streaming, one aspect that myself and many other streamers focus on is our alerts. With a good alert system, you will stand out from the crowd and also kind of help improve your audience interaction. There's been many times in the past where people like to donate or subscribe to me, even when I'm AFK, just to leave a silly message. Streamlabs alert system is really easy to utilize. With the click of a button, you can add the alerts widget, then go in and customize to your heart's content. They have a huge sound library, so if you're looking for something but you're not quite sure, check out the library. There's a lot of free stuff and great stuff in there. And from the Streamlabs dashboard, you can also customize your own tipping page. Streamlabs will give you your own custom URL, which your viewers can go to if they want to leave a tip or donation, and they don't take any of the cut from your donations. You get 100% of the revenue other than the standard processing fees. As with the alerts, you can customize your tip page design, so if you guys are interested, make sure you check out the link in the description down below. Give Streamlabs a go. It really is one of the best streaming softwares out there. Thank you to Streamlabs for sponsoring this video. Now, before we really jump into this video, I do want to state that good gear or best in slot gear in New World is subjective. Like the rule, one man's trash is another man's treasure can be applied to quite a few items that you get in the game, but we are going to be just sort of laying down some general rules and hopefully improving your guys' knowledge of how to identify when you get a good piece of gear, whether it's from a drop or crafting. Now, an example of some nuances that I want to give first of all come with actually some items that we got from that run there. So I have a pair of boots here that are medium, and they have Resilient, Sundering Riposte, Constitution, Dexterity. Now, Sundering Riposte is a rapier ability. Rapier does scale off of Dexterity and Intelligence secondary, and Constitution is also pretty handy for like everybody as well. Having a little bit more health is good. However, there is some nuance here in that medium boots would maybe not be ideal for somebody using a rapier. Rapier users typically, not always, but typically are going to be in a light equip load, and medium boots usually don't have a place in a light equip load. Now, again, this is incredibly nuanced, and there can be situations where you will find people who are going to be in using medium boots for their rapier build, but as a general rule of thumb, if you're looking for something that is a one-size-fits-all and will be like very easy to sell on the trading post or fit into a lot of different builds, this would not be it. Also, one thing to bear in mind as well is riposte, in my opinion, is typically only used in PvP, and it's typically used by life staff and rapier users. Those who are playing more offensive with the rapier would seek for offensive perks instead. This is a bit of a defensive perk. So again, it is nuanced, but you would typically be looking for a pair of light boots with these perks here, and ideally there wouldn't be any dexterity. It would just be all Constitution or Constitution and Focus. That would be the build that it would most likely slot into, but there are going to be a million and one different examples where it could work in a different build, but as a result, it's not in the most available build, and therefore it is not going to sell as well as something with different stats and a different equip load would sell. Hopefully this is making sense. I know it is very mind-boggling to a new player. Now, the other thing that I do want to talk about is specifically equipment pieces. So kind of going back to what we have with the boots here, there are sort of three different ways in which people generally configure their armor. And again, there is different examples where people will wear different pieces, but let's just go over those real quick. So first and foremost is a full set of heavy. So full heavy is a heavy equip load, and you just have every single piece of armor as heavy. And you know, this is a no-brainer, heavy, 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 just to try and get as much armor as you can. And what that means is heavy helmets, heavy chests, heavy gloves, heavy legs, and heavy boots all have some perceived value because they are used in heavy equip loads. Now, when we jump down to the next rung down, which is a medium equip load, there is a particular formula that most players go for in order to min-max the amount of armor that they get from the piece whilst just staying under the heavy threshold. So you can see here we're 22.9. If we went to 30, so if I put one more piece of heavy gear on, I would become a heavy equip load. But I'm just staying in that medium threshold right now. In order to do that, I have a heavy helmet, heavy chest, medium gloves, light legs, and medium boots. So what that means is heavy has got like a double marker against it now, because heavy chests and heavy helmets are used for both medium and heavy equip loads. So you can see some sort of value rising there where these are becoming even more lucrative. Medium gloves and medium boots. But what this does mean is that a medium helmet or some medium legs would be like less valuable because they're not as accessible in terms of different equip loads that people commonly use. Now, the final most common setup is for a light equip load, and that is rocking a light chest, and that is rocking a light helmet, medium chest, light gloves, light legs, and light boots. Now, you guys might have noticed again, light legs are being used in both a light and medium equip load, so some extra value there. However, again, this build does not use a medium helmet, so medium helmets generally not worth too much, medium legs generally not worth too much. However, the light gloves, medium gloves, and heavy gloves all have a perceived value because they're used in those 3 different commonly set up equip loads, and the same with the boots. I know this is... but I just wanted to lay that foundation down because it's going to apply to a lot more items that we look through as we go through this video. So with that out of the way, let's take a look through our inventory and identify whether we have any good pieces of gear from that Lazarus run that we did. So the first thing that we are taking a look at here is these medium legs, the resilient, centering, riposte, constitution, dexterity. We talked about this briefly, but because these are not light legs, they don't work in a light equip load, and that's typically where you want a rapier. So you might be able to get a little bit for this, but I would just be tempted to salvage it because I'm lazy. But if you're really desperate on gold, that one's worth throwing up onto the trading post. The next piece of gear that we have to take a look at here is a resilient, refreshing divine embrace, intelligence, constitution. Now, refreshing divine embrace is for the life staff. The stats for the life staff are focus. However, there is some crossover where you might see some life staff users use a void gauntlet, but most of the time, again, I don't think this is going to be a great item. Has some niche value, so you could sell it for a small amount of gold, but I personally would be salvaging this one. Next up, we have an amulet to take a look at. Now, when it comes to amulets, one baseline perk that you always want to see is health. If an amulet doesn't have health, it is an insta salvage. If you like, it's just, it has to be there. Why would you not want an increased health pool? So if it has health, it's worth taking a look at. If it doesn't have health, get rid of it. Now, this is bind on pickup as well, so you've got to bear in mind that you can only use this for yourself. What I would want to see on a 2-perk amulet is health and then some form of protection. So we're talking health, flame protection, health, frost protection, health, slash protection. This doesn't meet that criteria, so for me, it is a salvage. Next up, we have a helmet with critical retribution, which is a PvP only perk, and then blight resistance, which is a PvE only perk. These two clash, and they're also really bad perks as well, so that's an instant salvage for me. Critical retribution, just in my opinion, not a good perk at all, and blight resistance, probably like an example of 2 terrible perks for both the PvE and PvP category combined onto one item. Next up, and this is another rule that we can lay down here, is a sturdy energy invigorated chest. Now, if a piece of armor doesn't have either resilient or some form of ward, it is a no-go. So what I mean by that, and we'll try and take a look if I have hopefully some examples in here. All of my different gear sets, as we go through, you guys will notice there's one particular perk. So in this set here, resilient on that chest piece, resilient on the helmet, resilient on the gloves, legs, boots. And then if we take a look at this healer tank set here, we have ancient ward, ancient ward, ancient ward, ancient ward, ancient ward. And this is going to be the same with all of my gear sets. They will either have some form of ward, whether it's ancient, corrupted, lost, human, there's so many of them these days, or it will have all resilient. And that is because it's basically a mandatory perk for either PvP or PvE. So no resilient or no ward equals no bueno. So we instant salvage that. However, one way that it goes against this, and again can make things a little bit confusing, is if it has both resilient and ward. You want one or the other. You definitely want to have at least one, but not both of them. So resilient and ward, get rid of it. And if it doesn't have either of them, also get rid of it. Next up, we have a pair of resilient corruption resistance gloves. Again, this is PvE only for corruption resistance and PvP only. So very, very niche that if this is ever going to be good, I would just salvage that. Going on to the chest, no resilient, no ward. Next up, we have Instrumentality's earring here. It's an intelligence earring with refreshing and focus. Now, in my opinion, and if an earring doesn't have refreshing toast, it is a no bueno. It's a salvage straight away. Refreshing toast, much like health on the amulet, is a must-have perk. It reduces your cooldowns, so you can drink potions more often, which is just great for everybody. Who doesn't want to be able to drink health potions more often? So no refreshing toast equals if we get rid of it, and that's going to be the same with this one, and we'll go through and just get rid of some of those duplicates as well. Another earring here, but with no refreshing toast, so I will be salvaging that one. Now we have what I would say is a fairly respectable piece of gear here. We have resilient and refreshing, constitution, intelligence. So constitution intelligence is a nice stat line, as everybody would generally be rocking some constitution in PvP. I think to go with no constitution on your build at all in PvP is quite silly. Of course, the way I'm saying it's PvP is because we do have resilient, making it a PvP only armor piece. Refreshing, reducing your max cooldowns, everybody can benefit from that. So this is definitely a piece of gear to hold on to. I'm gonna hold down the L button and lock that item. This would be one I would sell in the trading post. How much for? We'll cover that just a little bit later on in the video. Next piece of gear we're taking a look at is some heavy gloves here with Ancient Ward and Elemental Aversion. This is actually two really great perks here, what I would call S tier perks. Ancient Ward obviously going to be great for any ancient related content. Think Lazarus Instrumentality, you can think of the Ennead, you can think of Starstone Barrows, you know, the Ancient Ward for all of those. Elemental Aversion is also a really, really good perk for just reducing incoming elemental damage. However, one thing that does let this piece of gear down is that it is a heavy glove. This means it's only going to be usable in a heavy equip load, as we previously mentioned. If you're in a medium equip load, it's usually medium gloves. If you're in a light equip load, it's going to be light gloves. So because this is heavy gloves, it's only really going to work for like a mage tank, which means it's very nuanced. It's also bind on pickup as well. So unless you plan to play mage tank, which generally you're not going to do, I'm afraid this one would be a salvage, despite the perks being pretty good and the stats. It's just, we needed these to be light or medium gloves at most. Now we have a medium helmet with Dexterity Constitution and Corruption Resistance Critical Retribution. This is a pretty terrible helmet. Hopefully you guys are starting to realize the patterns here. Medium helmet means it doesn't fit into the standard heavy equip load, it doesn't fit into the standard medium equip load, and it doesn't fit into the standard light equip load. Also, the perks are pretty awful. Critical Retribution, I think, is a very low tier PvP perk, and Corruption Resistance, a very low tier PvE. So just a salvage on that one. Same pair of gloves here. I will go through and just remove all the duplicate items that we have of those ones, which just seems to be one actually. Then we have Instrumentality's Ring, which is a Sacred, Infected, and Focus Ring. Now, Sacred is a very desirable perk for healers. So Sacred it benefits your outgoing healing, which is pretty much only the Life Staff and some Void Gauntlet. So this is targeting towards healers. Healers are always in a light equip load, like 99.9% of healers are playing in a light equip load. And one thing that people in a light equip load desire on their ring is Hearty. By getting the Hearty perk, they can increase their stamina and get access to 3 dodges instead of 2. So for Sacred to be valuable on a ring, it also has to coincide with Hearty. So Hearty Sacred is a keeper. If you have Sacred but you don't have Hearty, it's something that you're going to salvage. So again, sadly, this ring is a salvage along with all the duplicate versions of it. Next up, we have a piece of armor with Sturdy Elemental Aversion. As we previously mentioned, this doesn't meet our criteria of having Resilience or Ward, so it is a salvage. Then we have some Ancient Ward Elemental Aversion boots. Again, Ancient Ward Elemental Aversion, great set of perks, strength, and it's a medium pair of boots. So this could work in a medium equip load where we go heavy helmet, heavy chest, medium gloves, light legs, medium boots. It is very common that you see DPS players in a light equip load, but I do think medium equip load DPS could work. So these would be a pair of boots that I would consider keeping myself if I was interested in playing some sort of strength DPS in Ancient Expeditions. So we'll lock those and keep them for myself. I can't sell them because they are bind on pickup. Chest piece here with Ancient Ward Vigor, Intelligence. Again, Intelligence on a heavy chest. This could work if you're playing a medium or heavy equip load, because heavy chests are used in both of those. But I would find that most players playing with Intelligence are going to be light armor. A mage is the Intelligence playstyle most of the time. So although it is interesting enough and you could sell this for a little bit of gold, maybe like 100 to 200 gold on the trading post, I'm personally going to salvage it because I just don't think it would go for too much. We've got another piece of the Forgotten Protectors set here. It is a medium pair of legs with Elemental Aversion and Ancient Ward. Medium legs, as we previously mentioned, don't fit into the standard sort of setup that we usually see in most pieces of gear, so I am going to salvage these, but these could be worth keeping if you wanted to shift things around a little bit in terms of your equip load and which pieces are heavy, medium, and light. Chest piece, no resilient, no ward, it is a salvage. Pair of gloves here, we do have ward, it is human ward, but the second perk down here is a bit of a stinker. Look is a perk that most of the time I would say is useless unless you're doing a chest run, so you could find somebody to buy these if they wanted to run chests in a specific area that is filled with human enemies. An example that comes to mind for me is Atlas Foundry. It is pretty common that you see people running Atlas Foundry. However, it is a very niche piece of gear, so could sell it, but I'm going to salvage it myself. Same with this one here, Ancient Ward and Look. If you were running some area that had a lot of chests, Luck is just not really going to do too much in terms of expeditions. It is kind of a dead perk. It's a greedy perk at the very least anyway, because it doesn't benefit your team. It's just to hopefully increase your chances of getting better drops. So for me, this one's a salvage as well. Another pair of gloves here, but there is no resilient, no ward. We do have a resilient helmet here, but it's heavy and it has Constitution Intelligence. So a heavy helmet with a great sword perk, PvP, and then intelligence on there. Sadly, that's just a bit of a weird mishmash where greatsword is typically not being used in intelligence builds. Although the two perks look kind of good, the attributes are letting it down, and also the equipment piece here, again, just you would rather probably have a light helmet. Next up, we have a pair of heavy legs, strength, vigor, and human ward. This is actually a really good combination of perks here, even though it's only 2 perks. Strength is going to be useful for tank and DPS, but the fact that it's heavy legs means it's much more likely to be a tank. Human ward means it's going to be great to run in the Empyrean Forge, which is one of the new dungeons. And then Vigor is actually surprisingly good in the Empyrean Forge as well, because it reduces the duration of burns, and you do take a lot of burning damage in the Empyrean Forge. There's a lot of fire in the Forge. So actually a pretty decent pair of legs here, again, because we have Human Ward. It's heavy, the strength works for tanks, and Vigor is actually surprisingly relevant for this particular damage absorption type as well. Next up, a pair of legs with no resilient, no ward, so we salvage those. A helmet with no resilient, no ward. Also, if an item has indestructible on, that is just a real dead perk, like really, really dead. So most of the time, if indestructible's there, I'm gonna get rid of it. We have a pair of gloves with no resilient, no ward. We have a pair of boots here, which do have resilient and they do have refreshing. So much like we saw with that previous helmet, that's a great combination of perks there. Constitution focus means this is an applicable stat line for healers as well, as they usually like to run some focus and some constitution. So this is a keeper for me. We are going to try and sell that one in the trading post. How much for? Again, we'll cover it at the end of the video. We have a heavy helmet here with Ancient Ward, Elemental Aversion, Intelligence. Just like the previous heavy pieces with intelligence, it is just a weird mishmash where it would only really be used by mage tanks, which just aren't really a thing. So unless you wanted to venture into that for yourself, because it is bind on pickup, I'm going to be salvaging that one. We have a helmet here with no resilient, no ward, so that is going to go. Next up, a pair of legs with corrupted ward, shirking energy, focus, constitution. So this is bind on pickup. You would have to be considering, do I want to keep this for myself? Because again, only bind on equip can be sold on the trading post. For a healer, you do want to be rocking light legs. Again, it's medium chest is usually the only piece of medium gear you get away with, so it does meet our criteria of being light legs. Corrupted ward is going to be great in various different expeditions. So as a new player, this is definitely a piece of gear that I would equip if I was interested in healing in various mutated expeditions. Last piece of epic gear we got from the expedition was a resilient elemental aversion chest. That's a great set of perks right there, 2 S tier perks. It is a light chest though, which unfortunately does bring it down a bit, because again, we are usually looking for a medium chest. You can do some switcheroos and go for like medium legs and medium boots, or medium legs, medium gloves, medium legs, medium helmet, but most of the time, in order to make things easier, you usually want to go for a medium chest and everything else light. So unfortunately, it doesn't meet the criteria, but if I was brand new to healing and PvP, this would still be one that I would keep, and then I would try and make my other pieces of armor work around it. So potential keeper here for new healers interested in PvP. It's a good 2-perker right there. Next up, we actually have a named piece of gear here, the Chartist foot wraps, which have Ancient Ward, Refreshing Ward, and Invigorated. These are actually pretty well designed. Invigorated is not the best of perks, but it's going to be great for tanks because it's heavy. It's got strength, which is usually a tank stat line. Ancient Ward and Refreshing Ward also work very well for that particular tanking aspect, and Invigorated is not too bad. So I would certainly look to keep these if I was beginning or returning to New World and wanted to get into tanking in expeditions. Lastly, we have a legendary bind and equip here, so potentially we might be in some big money. Unfortunately, the perks don't look that great. Critical Retribution, we talked about this previously, is just a bit of a stinker when it comes to perks. And then Resilience, great, you know, that's a mandatory to have it be worth anything. Invigorated though is also not the best of perks here. So Critical Retribution, first of all, doesn't really matter to healers at all. With the focus stat line, this is primarily going to be used by healers, but healers don't really care about increasing their crit chance. There's no such thing as crit heals. So it's effectively a 2-perker with Resilient, Invigorated, and Invigorated, in my opinion, is like maybe a B tier perk. It's quite average. So effectively, you're just getting this for the Resilient. But by virtue of it being legendary, you might be able to sell it for a couple hundred gold, so still one to keep on to, even though it's like 1.5 perks effectively. It does meet our requirement of being a light helmet, so we can do light, medium, light, light, light. So let's take these pieces of gear to the trading post and figure out how much we can sell them for. This is going to be something that may work on your server, it may not, depending on how many people are playing. but should generally give you a pretty good like idea of how much something is worth. So first of all, let's take a look at our resilient refreshing gear and see how much we can get that for. So it was resilient refreshing on a pair of light boots and resilient refreshing on a light helmet. So going into the trading post, clicking on the filters up here and then adding in the perks, of course, we can add in resilient and then we will add in refreshing. Like so. Make sure you only those perks, otherwise it'll show you any item with resilient or refreshing, but you want specifically both those two. Then we want to search for minimum gear score 590 because anything under that can't be upgraded with the umbral shards. Apply, and then we're going to go to the apparel section and go specifically for light armor, and we can get an idea of how much stuff is selling for here, and sadly it doesn't look like it's that much. So our pair of boots, which were very similar to these, apparently are going for 30 gold, so yeah, I guess this is Barry, and the sort of threshold for good gear and bad gear, it is kind of feast or famine. It's either something's worth nothing or it's worth a ton, but I still do believe that this would be a good piece of gear at least to keep for yourself as a beginner healer. Sadly, not going to really be too much made there, but it was good to, you know, show, at least demonstrate the trading post. We have the human ward, vigor, strength legs, so you guys are kind of getting the idea of what we're doing here. We're basically just going to the trading post, putting in the perks that we have, setting the gear score, setting the equip load, and then we can compare to similar things. So this one had human ward and vigor. We'll see if we can find exactly those perks, and if we can't find exactly that stuff, then we will search for something that's fairly similar. So 590 apparel, heavy armor, and let's see if anything pops up here. So yeah, these look like they could be a little bit more, especially with them being strength. So constitution is comparable to strength because strength and constitution are both very desirable stats for a tank. So you could be looking to get around 1,000 gold for them. So again, that's pretty good. Much better than the 30 gold that we were getting for our PvP pieces. And the same sort of strategy can be applied to our other gear and inventory as well. So just going to the trading post, searching for the perks. If you can't find something that is exactly like it, then what you can do is just drop one of the perks and then take a look like for things around a similar price. So we could even set it to be strength specifically. And then take a look that way and look for something that's 2 perks. So you could look for human ward and invigorated if you couldn't find human ward and vigor, or you could look for human ward and refreshing, kind of sort of around the same power level if you can't find exactly the same specific perks that are on your item. Now before we wrap up this video, because it is going quite long, I wanted to leave you guys with a resource that I've been working on, so you'll be able to check out this in the description down below. As of like recording the video, it's still just up on a Google like Docs, Google Sheets, but this will be on the resources.BagginsTV website. So we have general armor perks here. We also have ability perks, armor attributes, amulets, rings, and earrings. Now I haven't covered weapons just yet, but if you guys do want to see a video on weapons and what perks and stuff and a resource for which perks are good on weapons, let me know in the comments down below. Also leave a like on this video. But in here you'll hopefully be able to find a good grasp on like what perks you want to be looking for. So ideally with general armor perks, you want to be looking for something that's in the best or average category, although I do believe we have renamed averaged on the website. And then also the ability perks. So usually looking for something from one of these 2 categories to combine together on a piece of gear, and then looking for something with like one of these 2 categories as well. So taking from column 1 or column 2 on any of these is generally going to lead you to a pretty good item. Now again, there's so much nuance when it comes to gear in New World that it's not always going to be accurate, but I haven't really seen anybody else out here try and undertake this project yet, so hopefully you guys have found this video useful. The same is, you know, done here for amulets, rings, and earrings as well, sort of categorizing the perks in terms of which ones are good and which ones are bad, which ones you should salvage, and which ones you could consider selling. So that is where we're going to leave it here today, guys. It was a pretty lengthy video, and I hopefully we're able to convey the information that was in my head. I know it can be quite confusing, but if you guys have any further questions, make sure you jump in the stream. I'll put a link in the description down below. We're live almost every day playing some New World, and I'm always down to talk about various concepts in the game. So yeah, if you guys are confused, check out the stream. Make sure you go to the resource, and as always, like and subscribe the video, and I'll catch you guys all in the next one.